Everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes. It's going to give it until 2 minutes past just for the final few to join us, and then we'll hand over to Elio. So we're just going to start in 2 minutes time. So 1 moment. Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, which is about the recent acquisition of VMware from Broadcom. I'm going to hand over to Elio in a moment. He's going to go through this today's session with you. Just quickly to point out, if they've got any questions, you can either pop them in the questions section or the chat box at the bottom, and we'll aim to get those answered at the end. But any questions throughout, just pop them in there and we'll answer those at the end. So now that we've got majority of people on, I'm going to hand over to Elio and take it from there.
Cool, thank you. Hi everyone, thanks for joining this brief webinar today. So yeah, as advertised, we'll be talking about Broadcom's acquisition of VMware and navigating this evolving landscape. Evolving, definitely. So small disclaimer, there's still a lot going on, a lot of changes. So all this information we have is as we know it best today, and might change slightly over the next few weeks as the Broadcom changes are still coming into effect. So just a quick, who am I? So I'm Elio de Silva. I'm head of platforms and data center for Clarinet UK. I've been in the IT industry for over 20 years, and 12 of those have been managing VMware based platforms as an engineer, and both in operations. So yeah, hopefully familiar with Clarinet. We're a global IT services and managed services company, mainly based in Europe, but we have presence globally. And yeah, let's dive into it. So hopefully you've heard, but Broadcom has acquired VMware. So the acquisition, I think, was announced about 2 years ago now, but it took 1.5 years, 2 years for it to go through all the competition boards in all the countries. But the acquisition formally completed in November last year. And with that, they announced quite a few changes. Some of those being some of the key ones. They've ended the perpetual licensing. So you can no longer just buy a VMware license and then you have that forever and you just buy your support packages. It's now a subscription only based model. They terminated all of the VMware partner programs. So yeah, completely ended that. I think they announced it in December and it took effect end of last month, end of March, and moving everyone to the new Broadcom Advantage partner program. They also significantly simplified the portfolio. They had many different bundles. I'll talk to them that you could use. They've slimmed that down to I think 4, and it moved to a per core pricing model. So from a partner perspective, or if you consumed it via the partner program, it was based on virtual RAM before. Now it's based on per physical core of your physical estate. So yeah, what did the acquisition, when they announced it, and everyone sort of created market confusion and panic, and we've seen quite a lot of disruption over the last weeks and months. With the end of the perpetual license, so that changes how we buy VMware products and licenses. So as I said, with the perpetual, that's gone. If you have a current support contract, we understand that will run its term, but then at the end of that, you'll have to move on to the subscription-based model. There's no more perpetual licensing. The termination of the partner programs, I think, in recent weeks has probably been the biggest impact and has completely shaken up the market and the ecosystem, from resellers to distributors to partners to train providers that all relied on and worked within the partner program. It's been a whirlwind. Nobody knows, not many people know where they stand and are waiting for information, waiting to see if they've made it as the new partner program. And yeah, so a lot of companies are still trying to understand where they stand, how they fit in, and how they can make things work, in the new world. With the change to the portfolio and the per core pricing model specifically, this has a considerable impact in our architecture and our operational costs. So before, when you built your server cluster and you costed it out based on the virtual memory licensing cost from VMware, that's very different to when you now look at it at a physical core level. And I've got some examples of what that might look like now. I think it's important also to think about or ask why are they doing this. So in the media, the noise has all been, the costs are significantly increasing, it's just a money grab, which may be fair. But we've had some calls with our VMware account managers, and they believe this is the strategy they need to take to make VMware successful in the coming years. Obviously, the hyperscalers are doing a lot in the last few years, and they felt that they needed to significantly focus down on how they run VMware, how they work with their partners to create a viable alternative to the hyperscalers. So if it continues going in 2, 3 years, 4 years, if the hyperscalers are your only option or your main option, then obviously that comes with downsides of only having one option. So in my opinion, having a large, significant, viable option in the private cloud, hybrid cloud space does make sense to me. Whether their approach will work or not, we'll see. But this is what they felt they needed to do to consolidate their efforts, focus down their efforts, change their billing model to make a competitive alternative in the cloud space. So just quickly looking at the portfolio, the new portfolio, there's actually 4 main bundles, and the other 2 though are quite small, internal sort of lab setups. So the main ones are on the left, VMware Cloud Foundation. This is their flagship bundle. Their primary focus is all going there. They're telling us that all 10,000 of their developers are going to be focused on VCF, and therefore all that brain power of VMware is going there. So this is their flagship. This is what they want and would want you to take and get all the main core features from VMware. The one on the right is probably more aimed at large enterprises or enterprises. The main difference I think between those 2 is NSX networking. HCX is in there as well. So yeah, a lot of people could use the VVF as an enterprise. As partners, as MSPs, as cloud service providers, we will be forced to use VCF so that we have the entire stack available to us, all the feature sets. There are a few add-ons you'll see, probably too small for the detail, but depending which package you go, it does also mean which add-ons you can add. So yeah, I think it used to be 180 or 200 SKUs or bundles that you could take, so you could just choose and pick all the different features and functionality you wanted, and then that would create your own package. That now is being significantly reduced, as I said, to these 2 with a few add-ons. So it does simplify it, but it does mean potentially paying for things you don't use today. But for example, the ARIA suite is now included as default. So that used to be VMware vRealize operations. So all that logging and insights and reporting is now built in. They want you to use it. So that may be beneficial, but if you're not using it today, you know that you might not want to pay for something you're not currently using, but you now have the option. I pulled this, so from WilliamLamb.com. He is a renowned blogger in the VMware space. So if you want to see more detail on this, he goes into in depth. So I recommend you go there if you want more information. Brief look at the pricing model now. This is the retail price, the recommended retail price from VMware. As you can see, that's all the billing lines you see now. It used to be pages. And the subscription model now is a 3-year term. So you have to take a 3-year term. And these prices are based on a per call per year. So the one that we'll be using, and I'll be using in my examples, is the VMware Cloud Foundation model, which is retail price $350 per core. The main thing to call out here is that there is a 16 core minimum per CPU. So no matter how many cores you actually have on your CPU, for every CPU in your server, 16 cores is the minimum you'll be billed for. So if I try and show you a table just to indicate what that may mean. So yeah, if you look on the far right, this is some examples of clusters. VMware ESXi server clusters, some of our internal, some of our customer ones that we've run through the model. As you can see, that the increase does look like, you know, anywhere from 100% to, in the extreme examples, 1000%, 10 times the price increase. So if we dive into one example just so you can understand that a bit more, here's an example of a 12 node VMware cluster, 12 server VMware cluster. It's only running 45 virtual machines, so not very efficient, and 400 or so gigs of RAM. So on the VRAM billing model, you only paid for that virtual RAM, came in around £6,000 a year for VMware licensing. As you can see, that significantly goes up on the per core billing model. You can see there that these servers are relatively old, I guess, in today's world. So 12 nodes with 144 cores. That means they're 6 core CPUs, sorry, 12 cores per server. So quite low in today's terms. But although this cluster only has 144 usable cores, in the new billing model, you'll be charged for 384 cores. So that's part of the reason why it's such a big increase, because it's not very efficient in the new model. Another example at the bottom, 3-node cluster with 31 VMs. Not great, but not too bad, I guess, in terms of that. But again, when you look at the RAM model versus what you'll be paying for cores, you know, 5 times increase on that. Again, that's 48 usable cores in that cluster, but you'll be charged for 96. So it just gives you that high-level view of where, I guess, some of the noise is coming when people say it's way more expensive. We've run it through the examples, some of our clusters and some of our customer clusters, and we can see that. Just to look a little bit deeper into an inefficient cluster, so you can look at your own. If you have dedicated platforms, internal clusters. This is an 8-node cluster. So again, the first thing to point out is these are 8-core servers in this case, and there's 2 of them. So 16 total cores per server, but with that 16-core minimum, 32. So straight away, you're getting penalized and paying for things that you don't actually have in terms of the cores. Again, you know, in today's world, you know, you should be running 10s, 50, 100 VMs per host on new spec servers. Here you can see we're running between 4 and 16, so not very efficient. Part of the reason for that in this particular example is the RAM in these servers is not very high, so you couldn't run more VMs than that anyway in this particular scenario. So what can you do about it? What are your options? So the first thing that you can obviously do, and what we're doing internally, is to reduce your hosts and CPU cores as much as possible. So that might seem obvious, but you didn't have to worry about it before. If you had a 5-server cluster, ran a couple of VMs on there, you've already invested in those servers. You didn't have to worry about it. You just paid for the RAM, and you know, you could happily just leave that there until you decide to do something with it. Now you're going to get heavily penalized in that scenario. So what we've been doing is looking at our clusters that have capacity, the ones that have better CPU and RAM numbers, and reducing that down. Also, you might have an 8-node cluster today with some extra space. You know, remove hosts, remove cores, so you can bring that down as a quick win. Ideally, and if you have some capex at your disposal, we're doing this as well, upgrading the current servers. or replacing them entirely. So as you can see, try and look at the core number you have today. Go for at least a 16-core server with a higher gigahertz. Put more RAM in them if they're possible. Quite simple, right? Try, if you've got hundreds of hosts, you can halve that by doubling the RAM, for example, in half your estate if that's possible, or replacing it. So again, probably makes sense, but that does take some investment. But when we run the numbers, you quite quickly get your return on investment for that capex in the 3-year operational running on that core-based pricing. Like for Clarinet Cloud, for Clarinet. So if you aren't already on a multi-tenant hosted solution, if you're running dedicated clusters, now is probably a good time to review that. Can you move to Clarinet, an MSP, a cloud service provider who has a multi-tenant platform? We have been invited and we have signed up to be a Broadcom Pinnacle partner. That is the top tier of the partnership program. So we will be working with VMware. We will on that partner program, looking at the architecture. We're investing heavily so that we can provide a cost-effective new platform, and in turn that means our customers can get the best pricing and the best features on that shared platform, because we can invest, pool our resources together, and then just carve out what you need, rather than you having to buy and maintain your entire server estates. Of course, you could investigate alternatives. So Clarinet, we're invested in with VMware. We still see them as a strategic partner, and we're going to invest and build our platforms. But we also know that for every customer, we like to look at each solution independently and see what works for them. And if that means that look at your estate and help you modernize it, and move it to a hyperscaler, absolutely, that's a great option. I think we have seen in recent times, if you don't modernize and you just run virtual machines in the hyperscalers, that can be quite costly and isn't necessarily the best way of doing it. But if you're on a modernization journey, now's the time that you probably relook at that, and Clarinet's there to help you in that case as well. Or in some cases, an alternative. So Nutanix obviously is one of the biggest competitors to VMware, and certainly for dedicated private cloud solutions, we think that could be a good option. So we're talking to them, so we have another tool in our toolbox for customers as required. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share to start with. So are there any questions?
Thank you for that. Excuse me. We have had 2 questions come in. So the first one, what other parts of my service are going to be impacted by this price rise?
So it's the VMware licensing that all VMware users, all VMware partners will be seeing their increase too. So although we're going to do as much as we can to mitigate these costs over time and make our platforms or our customers' platforms more efficient, there is going to be a period where it's going to take a few weeks and months to do that. So the parts of the infrastructure or the parts of the building that will be affected will be the cloud infrastructure essentially. So if you buy Clarinet Cloud, or you buy the cloud infrastructure, the cloud hosting line, within that there's VMware licensing. So we're going to re-look at all our services, and where the VMware licensing is in there, we will apply appropriate increase based on what we're getting from VMware. So it will be your cloud infrastructure line, RAM, CPU usage.
Thank you. A second one. We just had another one come in as well. Will we be contacted on an individual basis with expected cost and possible solutions?
Absolutely. So we will be sending out very shortly exactly in emails to each specific customer and how they will be affected and what the price increase will be. That will be followed up the week after, days after, by your CSM, who will discuss options. So you have a chat with you, see what you're thinking, and then we can go away and look at alternatives or enhancements, or relook at your estate to make it more efficient. So yeah, our CSMs and account managers will be reaching out very soon after you get your email on how it will impact you.
Okay, great. Apologies, we've had a couple more as well. Have there been any announced changes to costs for VMware Cloud on AWS or Azure VMware?
I haven't seen any, actually. I was thinking that ourselves because we've also been deploying some AVS solutions recently. I guess that will be for Microsoft and Azure to come back with. So they will be going through the same process, I understand, with VMware. So they will be getting their increases or how it will affect them. They will then decide how that impacts their product and how they pass on that billing. But no, I haven't heard anything. But I imagine if it's not happening soon, at some point they'll need to factor that in.
Okay, and then the last one, is there a discounted cost if I commit to a longer term?
The short answer is yes. We're still working on what that looks like. As a partner, I think as a Pinnacle or Premium, we will all have access to discounts as partners, and then we will work on that to our customers. But we only get discounts based on committed cores. So as Clarinet, if we currently have 10,000 cores, we wouldn't commit all of them because we don't know if those customers will be using them, and obviously there's risk for us upfronting that money and committing to that money that we can't reduce over a 3-year term. But obviously we will do some of that for our own sake. But yes, if customers then come to us and say that you'll commit to us for the 3 years, that then means we can go back to VMware, up our commit to get the discount applied, which means we can apply that to our customers as well.
Awesome, fabulous, thank you. That's all the questions answered. So we've not had any more come in. If you do have any more questions that you think of after this session, we'll be sending out an email regarding this with the recording to you guys tomorrow. So if you do have any further questions, you can either pop an email back to us or speak to your account manager as well. But thank you, Elio, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.